And I think that is all for the announcements. Jeff?
Yes, Russell?
Do you have anything to say?
I do, actually. Last time I was on the show, there were many hints dropped about the material I had prepared, but there didn't happen to be time on that occasion, so I'll go into that now. Here's the news story. I found this interesting. Man wakes after paramedics declare him dead. A Detroit man woke after being declared dead at about noon on Wednesday, October 19. Louis Golson, 51, was pronounced dead by EMS crews that responded to the home on the 13,000 block of Maple Ridge on Detroit's east side, where he lives with his sister, Lisa, and her husband. Lisa McLeod's husband went downstairs to Golson's basement bedroom to check on him and found that he wasn't moving and was unresponsive. A short time after EMS arrived at the home, they came upstairs to tell the family that Golson was dead. The crew apparently claimed that the 116-pound man had died in his bed overnight and rigor mortis had begun to set in. Quote, "They told me to call the doctor to sign the death certificate and that they will not have to take him to the morgue, that the funeral home can come and get him," said Golson's niece, Kimberly. McLeod said she started notifying family members that he had passed while EMS waited at the scene for police. At about 2 p.m., when Golson's other sister, Deborah, went downstairs to view the body, Louis opened his eyes and moved his arms, the report says. Police responding to the scene also confirmed that the 51-year-old was not dead. Another quote, "When the police came, they took the light, flashed it into his eyes, and realized he was alive," unquote. Golson was rushed to the hospital where doctors determined that the diabetic had suffered a sugar attack. He was treated and is recuperating in a hospital bed, according to the station. Deborah Golson told reporters she believes the incident is part miracle and part mistake. Which is actually, that's from the written version of this news story. I watched the video interview with this woman that accompanied the written version, and in fact what she said was that it was both a miracle and a mistake. And, this whole idea of miracles comes up periodically with religious people, and listening to the story, I'm wondering, what is a miracle anyway? I mean, is it a miracle that we have incompetent emergency medical technicians that can misdiagnose whether a guy's dead or not? Is it a miracle that after having been misdiagnosed, somebody else happened to catch a glimpse of him moving around, so he didn't go straight into the ground without the mistake being caught? Where's the miracle? And what is a miracle exactly? So I went to my favorite reference source, the internet, and
the prestigious internet.
Yes, of course, where which knows all. The top 2 hits on my favorite search engine, Alta Vista, for the word miracle were a 2004 hockey film starring Kurt Russell. I'm pretty sure his family were not saying that his accidental misdiagnosis was that hockey film, or a Queen cover band from the Netherlands. Eventually, I had to go over to dictionary.com, where I found this. Miracle, noun, 1, an event that appears inexplicable by the laws of nature, and so is held to be supernatural in origin or an act of God. Or 2, something that excites admiring awe or wonder.
Appears inexplicable. That leaves a lot of wiggle room.
It does, but also I think it would have to be a certain kind of thing that appears inexplicable in order to be taken as supernatural in origin or an act of a god. And again, given this story with this woman saying that her brother's death was both an accident, both a mistake and a miracle, Which of those two definitions apply? Did it seem like it violated the laws of nature and had to be a supernatural act of God? Well, no, I don't think so. Why would you assume that? Or did it excite admiring awe or wonder? I think as soon as you admit that there's at least part mistake going on, there shouldn't be admiring awe and wonder. But, you know, what do I know? The word comes from the Latin miraculum, from mirari, to wonder at, or from mirus, meaning wonderful. Adherents of many religions assert that miraculous events are proof of the existence of an omnipotent, omniscient, and all-benevolent God. The argument runs like this. 1. There are events which seem to be miracles. And apparently the standards on whether an event seems to be a miracle or not are extremely slack, because given this one story, right?
And given what Catholics go to achieve sainthood, when you look at the miracles they supposedly performed, a lot of them are awfully lame. Like a whole bunch of sick people prayed to this person and one of them got better.
Yeah. Oh, you know, they recently sainted Mother Teresa,
right,
for having cured some woman's something or other, when the actual doctor in attendance of the woman in question said, why no, we were following standard medical procedures and the outcome for that patient was pretty much what you'd expect for people in her condition, and there was no miracle at all. But Catholic Church didn't care. They wanted to slap the miracle label on Mother Teresa. Let's move on. Part 2 of the argument, right? First, there's things that they say seem to be miracles. 2, the best explanation for these events is that they were performed by a supernatural being. Again, I don't see how this can possibly apply to this claim of the man where we just had incompetent medical technicians. 3, therefore, there probably is a supernatural being, i.e. God, that performs what appears to be miracles. Now, there are a number of criticisms of this argument. First of all, while the existence of miracles may imply the existence of a supernatural miracle worker, that's assuming that it can be established that there ever have been any supernatural miracles, but suppose there were. That could imply the existence of a supernatural miracle worker, but that supernatural miracle worker would not have to be an omnipotent, omniscient, all-benevolent God. Even if you want to think supernatural things happen, as soon as you think this is a universe where there's like things that can happen that violate the basic laws of physics, and particularly if you believe in a whole pantheon, or actually I shouldn't say pantheon for Christians because they only believe in one God, but even Christians of many varieties believe in angels and devils and all kinds of other things that can perform supernatural tricks.
Peeves the Poltergeist springs to mind from Harry Potter.
Right, sure. There are many examples from literature or from other religions of beings that are fall far short of being gods, but can do things that seem miraculous. Also, some argue that miracles, if established, are evidence that a perfect God does not exist, because that sort of being would not want to or need to violate its own laws of nature.
That's the Douglas argument, the Douglas Adams argument, basically. If there was a God, he wouldn't do anything to prove he existed, and since there is proof, he doesn't exist.
Right. Also, Roman Catholic theologians accept this reasoning and only conclude that the miracles are from an omnipotent God because they believe that they have previously logically proven through concepts like the prime mover argument that there has to be one of those gods, which means that's not even an argument. They think they've proved that the God exists some other way. Furthermore, the laws of nature are inferred from empirical evidence. Thus, if an accepted law of nature were ever violated, it could simply be that the accepted law was an erroneous inference from an insufficient set of empirical observations rather than an actual supernatural event. That is to say, it could be we just had our grasp of what the physical laws were was incorrect, and then what they're calling a miracle is just a perfectly natural thing that's just a rare example that shows that our current understanding is not correct. Finally, I believe finally, yes. All claims of miracles are premature until such time as a complete knowledge of all natural laws is held by all who make and examine the claim, and the miracle is demonstrated to be not natural. That is to say, until you've really ruled out physical, normal, mundane explanations, it's way too early to leap to the assumption that anything, no matter how unusual or exciting or strange it is, that it was caused by magical forces. Because all claims of natural laws are falsifiable, complete knowledge is impossible, and therefore it is not now, nor will it ever be, time to claim that an event has broken a natural law. Comments?
Okay. What about something really obvious of the sort that never happens? Like one of my favorite examples is the stars spontaneously rearrange themselves in the sky to spell "I'm up here, stupid."
Okay,
and that's viewable by everyone.
Right. Well, first you got omnipotence, and then at a much, much, much lower level than omnipotence, which is infinite. At a much, much, much lower level than that, you have sufficient power to rearrange the stars. Right? Because you don't need an omnipotent being to do that. You need a hugely, immensely powerful being, even if it's a being, right? Because it could be that there are unknown natural laws that cause that to happen every once in a while, and it would be incredibly unusual and freakish, but that wouldn't make it a miracle and certainly wouldn't prove that therefore there's a God. Even if the stars were arranged into a big message in the night sky that said, "Hi, I'm doing this to prove that I'm God," you'd still have to say, well, something short of omnipotent could have done that.
Okay.
Here's something interesting. Littlewood's Law. Have you ever heard of this? It's one of those things like oh, now I'm not going to remember the name of it. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. What's it called? Murphy's Law. It's not one of those kinds of things.
It's more of a rule of thumb than a law.
Right. This is not a scientific law, but the Littlewood's Law states that individuals can expect a miracle, defined as something exciting, admiring, awe, and wonder. They can expect a miracle to happen to them at the rate of about 1 per month. This law was framed by Cambridge University professor J.E. Littlewood and published in a collection of his work, A Mathematician's Miscellany. It seeks to debunk one element of supposed supernatural phenomena and is related to the more general law of truly large numbers, which states that with a sample size large enough, any outrageous thing is likely to happen. Littlewood's Law is explained as follows. A miracle is defined as an exceptional event of special significance occurring at a frequency of 1 in a million. Which is just, that's just a rule of thumb, because people like to say, what are the odds? 1 in a million, because that's a lot, right? Suppose that during the hours in which a human being is awake and alert, that human being will experience one thing per second. Because there's stuff going on all the time, right?
Yeah.
For instance, seeing a computer screen, a keyboard, a mouse, reading this article, etc. This is, of course, self-referential because I found it on the internet. Suppose the human is alert for only 8 hours a day. In 35 days, a human will have experienced 1,008,000 things, and therefore, based on that definition of a miracle, you can expect one of them to occur roughly once a month. That's just to say, about once a month, you'll see something that seems inexplicable, that seems extraordinary, that seems so out of the ordinary that you might go, hey, wow, that's miraculous. But it demonstrates, even given the idea that that miracles have to be extremely unusual, that doesn't mean that it's that far between incidents that we might interpret that way. And it's just another example of how this really comes down to our interpretation of what we've seen. There is, to my knowledge, no clear, measure of whether a thing is miraculous or not. No objective standard. It all comes down to the person. I mean, we've had callers to this show. I remember one incident in particular where a woman was saying that she experienced a miracle once when it was raining really hard, and she managed to get to actually make the off-ramp she was aiming for without crashing.
Now, if that is included in the definition of miracle, then that sort of miracle, I'm not saying that particular thing, but a miracle of that degree, I bet happens a lot more than 1 in a million times.
Yeah, if you
which means that the more gullible a person is, the more miracles they experience.
The lower your standards of the miraculous, the more frequently you're going to experience things you're willing to call miracles. That doesn't make them supernatural events.
Right. And I mean, even with given events that are truly rare, like let's say you have a disease that 999,999 people have had, and none of them have ever recovered. They've all died, and you don't. Is that a miracle?
Well,
no, because the odds change at that point. It goes from a reliably terminal disease to a 1 in a million chance of survival.
Right.
The way that, I mean, the rule that we had that everyone dies from this was wrong.
Right. And here's another great example of how people misinterpret things as miracles. There's this place called Lourdes, right? It's holy to Catholics, and as far as I can tell, other credulous people also believe that it's a place you can go to get a miraculous cure.
In France?
I think it's in France. It sounds French to me. This is documented in Carl Sagan's book, The Demon-Haunted World, where he talks about skepticism and critical thinking and the pitfalls of superstitious thinking. According to the Catholic Church, there have been a very, very small number of incidents that occurred at Lourdes that the Catholic Church itself is willing to claim were miraculous, right? These like cancer remissions and things that, in fact, have been known to happen in places other than Lourdes, far less holy places than that. But there's a very small number, and I forget what the exact number is. Carl Sagan checked the statistics on the likelihood of dying from, say, air travel on your way to Lourdes, and multiplied that by the number of people that are known to have visited Lourdes over the period during which the Catholic Church has been keeping these statistics, and discovered, very interestingly, that your chances of dying en route due to mundane causes of, airplane accidents, train accidents, weather catastrophes, earthquakes, just, being mugged on the road, your odds of dying on the way to Lourdes are much, 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 much higher than your odds of actually receiving a miraculous cure there, according to the numbers.
Of course, that doesn't mean that going to Lourdes is a particularly risky activity.
No, it's no more risky than traveling anywhere else. But if you
make a special trip to, if you travel on a day that you wouldn't have.
Exactly,
right.
Exactly. So, and that is where this starts to be an issue, right? I mean, it really matters whether the things that happen to us are the natural result of physical laws or whether there are invisible spooks flying around making stuff happen. It really does matter. And it matters so much that it is pretty counterproductive and unwise to leap to conclusions of miraculous causes for things before you actually really know. And I guess that's the point I'm making. That guy who was declared dead by accident, that's not a miracle. That's an EMS crew doing a shoddy job and getting caught. Not a miracle. That kind of stuff happens. Accidents happen, and the discovery of accidents also happens. Nothing supernatural there. To leap up with the explanation that there had to be the involvement of some supernatural forces means that you're not paying attention of what is possible in a mundane sense any day of the week ever, and leads to risk-taking and misinterpretations and lack of understanding of the real world. So that is my point. Have we got the phone number up, by the way?
Yes, we have. If you are watching the show live today, then the phone number will be at the bottom of your screen. If you're watching a rerun, then it won't, which is why I'm not going to say the number out loud. But look down at the bottom of your screen right now, and if you see the phone number, you can now call it.
Okay.
Just before we go to the call, I'd like to interject that when my son was born, which was one of the greatest things I've ever experienced, but somebody told me that childbirth is a miracle. And despite it being a great thing to be present at, I find it really hard to believe that you can use the word miracle to apply to something that happens about 3 times every second, is it? Somewhere on the planet.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, there is a sense in which the word miracle is just used, for emphasis, right?
Right.
When I really, really liked that. And so that was miraculous, that was really fun, or that was really amazing to me.
Yeah, well, your second definition is something that excites admiring awe or wonder.
Right, right. And in that sense, I don't have a problem with people expressing their admiring awe and wonder, but it, of course, raises the question, what are you talking about when you use the word miracle? Do you mean that some invisible space creature reached into your life and made something happen, or do you just mean, wow, that was pretty intense?
Yeah, and I actually recently learned the formal name for that fallacy. It's known as equivocation. And it's the kind of fallacy that happens when a word has 2 meanings, and you use one meaning, but you use the other meaning of the word to build an argument. Like, for instance, the example given, which I thought was great, was all banks are next to the sides of rivers. Therefore, Wells Fargo is next to a river.
Right.
All right, our first caller is Morgan. Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Morgan.
Hi.
Hello. I was just calling because y'all talking about miracles and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to judge or anything or boast or anything.
Okay.
I'm a Christian. I'm a Baptist. And I don't necessarily think that what happened was a miracle with that one guy who, survived. But I do believe in miracles, and I do believe in God, and I've had personal experiences. And, I was going through a very, very hard time. And with family and stuff, I didn't think I could ever get out of it. And so I came to God, and I was like, I know you can't be here right now, but just please help me, and just give me the right words and the right things to say to my family, and just maybe help me get closer to you. And I was like, I know you can't be right now, but just help me get your word. And so later on that night, I went to a show with a bunch of bands, and when I got there, there was this church band playing, and we just started singing and dancing, and I felt God, and it just made me feel wonderful, and I never felt like that. I felt tingly, and I didn't understand how that could just happen. And I think that was a miracle, that he came to me and made me feel better, and everything was okay.
You felt tingly. Okay. There are actual, known causes of feeling tingly.
Yeah,
I felt relief.
We are, of course.
better.
This is the problem, you know, and I was afraid this would happen when I decided to cover this subject. We are, of course, happy that whatever personal problems that you had, you solved them, right?
Yeah.
We're happy
Good
about
on
that.
you.
So
Thank you.
please don't interpret. We're about to be skeptical about whether there was a supernatural cause for what you experienced. Please don't take that as, you know, an indication that we would rather that your problems hadn't gone away, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're glad that things got better for you. But, you know, people with problems with their family who are trying to think of what to say, who are not Christians, also think of things to say. You know, you're not, what happened to you may have felt unusual to you. It may be something that doesn't happen very often. But the point of what I was discussing earlier is that things that don't happen to you very often that seem kind of unusual, in fact, are not necessarily miraculous or supernatural.
But I felt like when I said I need your word and I need to feel better, and I just need comfort.
Have you ever felt some way about something and found out later that that feeling was not accurate? Or are all your feelings always accurate about everything?
No.
Well, maybe this is one of those times.
Let me put it this way. You strongly believe in God and did at the time, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So when you said, please God, help me be closer to you and help me think of the things to say to my family, you did that with the expectation going in that that your prayer would be answered, right?
No.
No. Then why did you say it?
Because sometimes He can't answer all your prayers. And
right, but you believed that there was at least a good chance that God would answer the prayer, otherwise you wouldn't have been praying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew that He would hear me.
So praying essentially made you feel better, because after praying you thought, well, it's not in my hands now, it's in God's hands. That whether there's really a God or not, that would make you feel good. It would be like getting a phone call from somebody saying, you know, I know what you're going through and I'm going to help you out. Even if that help never actually amounted to anything, you would feel more confident about the situation overall.
Well, anyway, thank you very much for your call, and this is something to think about. You are, of course, free to believe whatever you want.
Right.
I just want to say that I pray for you guys, and I just forgive you.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, I find it necessary to make a comment. You know, when you say you're going to pray for us, what you're saying is you think there's something wrong with us that needs to get fixed by your God. And you think you have a right to judge that there's something wrong with us and to invoke this supernatural power to change us to be the way you'd like us to be. And I just want to suggest that maybe that is incredibly rude.
I don't think she was being incredibly
I don't
rude.
think people who say that mean to be rude.
Right.
I think they live in a fantasy world where that is the way things are. But I think if they would step back for 5 seconds and think about that and what the implications are and what it is that they're doing, that they would see that it is rude.
Well, look at it
That's what I'm
this
saying.
way. She prayed to God that she would be helped, and because of her confidence in God, she immediately felt a tingly, happy feeling, which helped her think better about her problem.
Sure.
Maybe she really wishes nice things on us, which means she would want us to experience those tingly, happy feelings, except it doesn't work that way.
Even though she didn't say it explicitly, I think it's safe to assume, since we have the word atheist up here, and we get this kind of stuff all the time, what she's talking about is invoking the power of her invisible friend to turn us into Christians. Because that's the kind of thing
She didn't say what she would pray for us to do.
I'm going to make the assumption that's what she was talking about. It's an atheist show, right? We're sitting here trying to point out to her that her assumptions about the miraculous nature of this thing that she went through are worthy of questioning. And that bugged her, and it bugs her because she is told to be bugged in her religion that by the existence of people like us, and she felt that she had every right to try to have us magically transformed into other kind of people, when in fact we're quite happy being who we are and the way we are. So you shouldn't do that. You really shouldn't. It's rude.
Okay,
let's go on.
We're going on to Chris. What?
Okay.
Hi, Chris.
I agree with you. I think it's really rude when people say, I'm going to pray for you. That's like one step away from saying, I'm going to burn you at the stake to purify your soul. And,
I go back and forth on it. I mean, I think they think they're being nice.
And also, I think it depends on what it is they're praying for. And I made an assumption there with her call, which I think is justified. But I've had... I've mentioned to people, I've got a traffic ticket, and they say, well, I'll pray for you. And if they want to invoke their supernatural invisible friend to make my traffic ticket go away, I don't mind that kind of interference in my life. I mind the kind of interference that says, implicitly, that there's something wrong with me, something wrong about, that which makes me me, that needs to get fixed without my permission.
Yeah, it's like, I wish they would finish the sentence by saying, like, I'm going to pray for you because, you're going to burn in hell for the rest of your life and, you're a bad person and I'm so...
I take that as given unless they make it clear to me that that's not their kind of Christianity.
Yeah, see, or you could, when somebody says, I'll pray for you, you could say thanks and I'll sacrifice a chicken for you.
Right. I'll think happy thoughts
I wanted to ask a question about the Madeleine O'Hare thing from way back. The APD has been in the news here lately about dropping the ball on a lot of things concerning serving people in the community that they feel that they should, and not serving the rest of Austin. And I think the Madeleine O'Hare thing was just such a shoddy job, and I don't think it's ever been addressed on the Atheist Experience. And I thought maybe you guys had a comment on it.
The reason Madeleine O'Hare doesn't get addressed that much is basically because we have no particular ties to her, and we're not American atheists, and we think it sucks that somebody died because of their atheism.
Yeah, I think the caller is suggesting that the APD didn't investigate properly because she was an atheist.
Okay.
Yeah.
All I know is eventually there was investigation, and it seems to have been resolved, and that's fine.
Yeah, well, it was like a San Antonio newspaper columnist that did all the legwork and did everything for it. If it wasn't for him, APD wouldn't have done a damn thing, I think.
I'm not prepared to comment.
I don't know. I'm not an insider at the APD, so I can't comment. I would suspect that murder crimes go unsolved all the time, but I don't know.
Okay, well, fair enough. I thought I'd just broach the question.
Okay, I think that's kind of water under the bridge.
Right.
But do you have any comments on the whole miracles thing?
Oh yeah, well, addressing that last caller, that sweet girl who I'm glad as well solved her problems. A lot of teenagers have problems and they get them resolved one way or the other, or they don't. But I'm glad when they do. Many years ago when I was investigating churches and whatnot, I did go to a couple of Baptist things where you're jumping up and down and you're doing a lot of physical movement and everything else, and then there's a lot of hand clapping and a lot of tambourines and everything else, and loud music and everything.
Pentecostal?
And then they stop for just a second, and then there's this glorious music that goes on, and it's this endorphin run that goes through your body, and so that they call the body of Christ, and it's the Spirit of Christ coming into you. And I think probably that's what she experienced going to this place, or this rock show.
Oh yeah, I forgot she was going to a band. I mean, I've felt tingly at a really good rock concert too.
Yeah, or maybe they were passing something along in the drinks. Who knows? I mean, anything could have happened. But I'm glad she got her problem solved, and there's no real, for anybody who really tries to sit down and dissect it, there's no real evidence for a God anywhere. I can't say for certain there isn't one, but I don't see them anywhere. The world is running hot, and I don't see any evidence. So anyway, great show, guys.
Thanks for your call.
Thanks for calling. Next up, moving right along, we got Jason. Hello?
Hey, guys.
Hi, Jason.
Mary,
Yeah.
I just had a question for you guys. I've seen you on the show a few times. I haven't had a chance to talk to you, but I'm curious, are you guys speaking with complete certitude that there's not any type of elevated, maybe connective consciousness between humans that might be interpreted as God, whether or not it's a part of a particular religion or not?
Nope.
So is that pretty much globally any religion of any tribe, anywhere, ever? You guys don't think there's any type of higher elevated...
We don't think there is, but if you're asking us whether we have absolute certainty, no, we don't have absolute certainty. We know better than that.
Just like we don't have absolute certainty that there's not other life within our own solar system, for instance, but we're pretty sure that outside of Earth there isn't, there isn't any life.
Okay, well, that's all I really wanted to know.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Anything to add?
Yeah, no, the reason that we're atheists is because we're folks who are frequently invited, because we live in a religious culture, we're frequently invited to go ahead and start believing in a thing like that.
Right.
And we don't think that that would be a wise decision, because as far as we can tell, the evidence doesn't justify that belief. For us, it's the same as buying a used car. If the evidence is that the car is a lemon, you don't buy it, even though you could be wrong. It could just look crummy and actually run just great. But the thing to do, the smart thing to do at all times, is to go with the evidence.
Exactly. For the benefit of the caller before last, who sounded atheist-friendly, and for the benefit of any other people who might be watching, not calling, but say, "Hey, I'd like to talk to these people more." A reminder that at 6:45, that's 45 minutes after this show ends, we'll all be going down to Mongolian Barbecue at 117 San Jacinto Boulevard. That's downtown. West on 1st Street from I-35, a few blocks. So feel free to come and meet with us. Who's next?
That would be... Jaime?
Sorry. Jaime. Sorry about that.
What the?
I think we're out of callers.
Okay. Okay then.
Let's see. Did you already talk about Pat Robertson? I think that Pat Robertson was mentioned last week on the show.
Okay.
So actually, no, I don't have a lot of news unless I want to, unless I were to read this press release about Reginald Finley. As a matter of fact, the callers are lined up, and we're slowly getting names for them. So I'm going to go with Jerry. Hello, Jerry.
Jerry?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. I'm Ryan, actually, not Jerry.
Oh, okay.
Okay, cool. Hey, guys, I had a question. One of you earlier made a comment about your your example of a miracle being like if the stars realigned and formed a saying in the sky. I just had a question about that.
Well, Jeff actually discounted that as a miracle, or at least said...
Right. But my question is, if that actually did happen tomorrow night, if you walked outside and looked up in the sky and you actually saw that would you just say, "Oh, that's kind of neat, that's a coincidence, but yeah, it's kind of cool," and walk off, or would you actually think there is a God and that's a miracle?
I would say that if that happened tomorrow night, an event unlike any other that has actually happened in history, then I would say at the very least that my perception of how the universe works has changed a lot.
Good answer. I think, I don't think that it's wise ever to draw a conclusion from isolated events, but rather from the weight of evidence over time. So I would certainly be stuck having to face the fact that there was stuff going on in the universe that went far beyond what I was aware of before.
Right.
Whether I would necessarily conclude that must be God, and certainly any particular God, probably not. Probably not. But I would
see that and just think, man, that's crazy. I mean, chances of that happening again are just, I mean, that's going to happen again. But man, you wouldn't.
Yeah, I would also be questioning my own sanity.
I'm here to see what this is God.
Yeah, but I'm going to assume
that just happened to happen.
I'm sorry, say that again, caller?
I mean, if you looked up and saw it in the sky, you would think that was just something that happened to happen. It just.
Yeah, I'm going to assume in my example that many people were able to see that independently and verify it. If it just happened to me, I would say, gee, my brain was
I think what the caller is now asking about is like whether we would just call it a coincidence. No, I certainly wouldn't call it a coincidence.
Not likely.
I would say that, you know, given what we know about why the stars are the way they are, how big they are, the kind of forces it would take to move them, what I would conclude is that something had happened that fit the requirements of moving those things around, right? I wouldn't necessarily know what it was that had done it.
Right. Okay.
Right. So I certainly wouldn't call it a coincidence. I would just say, boy, there's something I really don't know about.
Right. So by this, there is no such thing as a miracle then, by your definition, and by the fact that if something way out of the ordinary does happen, it's just the fact that we just don't have enough information about our world and the laws of nature. So we'll have to expand on that. So we'll just have to change our laws.
But let me say something else, right? For me, I don't need a miracle to prove that God exists.
I don't either. I don't think that you need a miracle to prove that God exists.
I can think of like way not miraculous stuff that might be able to convince me of that. Right.
Okay.
I'm just saying, when I see some event happen, I'm going to look at that in the context of what I know about the universe so far, and if it seems not to fit, my first question is not, you know, which invisible supernatural being made it happen. My first question is, what did I not know about the universe before that would explain this thing I've just seen to me? And that, I guess, theoretically could be a god, but there's all kinds of non-supernatural things.
Or it could be time travelers from a distant future where they've developed the technology to pull stars around.
It's not hard,
you know.
Yeah. It's not hard to think of.
I mean, if you're going to go and make up something,
Go ahead.
I think. Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's interesting that you say that, because a miracle is something that is very out of the ordinary, but it's also something out of the ordinary that seems to have an intent behind it, or a will behind it. Does that make sense? Like, you know, things out of the ordinary happen every day, but it's the ones that you look at and say, man, somebody with an intelligent mind had to have caused that to happen. That's what a miracle is.
There's a real problem with that, though, with that interpretation, because, you can't, just by looking at stuff, you can't determine intent like that. It doesn't work that way.
But if you saw something like a message in the sky, that would very, very, very well seem to have intent behind it. There would be a lot of evidence to say that there's an intent behind that, because it isn't a language that I know.
Something that specific would be, I would be way more likely to accept that there was intent.
Right. Sure. Okay. And then, I mean, I just don't see how, if something like that happened, and this is a hypothetical.
But you heard what I said, right? A god. Let's just take the Christian God, for example, right?
Okay.
It's supposed to be omnipotent, right?
Right.
That means more powerful than.
I mean, I agree with you. That does not prove omnipotence at all. Well, I agree with you there.
He agrees that you can't prove anything.
I'm not talking about proving omnipotence. I'm saying, you know, a god is supposed to be omnipotent. He can do anything, right?
Right.
And let's say that's at the top. Here's the scale of how much power there might be, right? And a god is way up at the top. Now, the amount of power it would take to move stars around and spell out a message that we could see in the night sky is somewhere below that.
Right.
It doesn't take infinite power, right?
Okay, right.
So it's not, that could not be proof of an omnipotent God.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do agree with you on that. But what I'm saying is that is a little bit, at least some evidence, or an argument can be made that something with a will and with an extreme amount of power caused that. Not an omnipotent God.
Let's say, however small.
It's possibly an omnipotent God, but something with a will and an extreme amount of power seems to have caused that.
Let's say, however small, it's a point in favor of the God hypothesis.
Sure. What's your point, caller?
I'll give you that.
What I'm saying is, it seems more likely from that it's something with a will and an intelligence, rather than just an event that's happening.
as soon as we have like actual words spelled out, we're kind of out of the realm of likelihood, right? I mean, language is language.
That's what I'm saying.
Huh?
But your point earlier was something that is extremely unlikely, if it happens, it's still not a miracle, just because there's something that will be able to explain it in the future. My point is, if something's that unlikely, but seems to have a will like that happens, you still are going to say it's just a coincidence.
We already said that we wouldn't call it a coincidence.
Wait, hold on, caller. The opposite of miracle is not coincidence.
The
opposite of miracle is something that when you actually understand what happened, you can see that it all took place within the bounds of natural law.
Okay, that's
right.
Fine.
That doesn't make it a coincidence.
Right,
that just makes it not a miracle.
Right. Okay. I'm using the wrong word here.
All right.
I think my point is still standing.
What's your point?
My point is, if something like that happens, something that's very unlikely, and seems to have a will behind it, will you still sit there and say, well, there might be some way in the future to explain it that's other than a God with a will?
Well, of course. Why would we not?
Yeah.
Why would we not? I mean, are you going to tell me that if you saw something like that, you would just write off the possibility that there could be any physical explanation and leap straight to the supernatural one?
I would not write it off. But
there you go.
Time I saw something like that, or if I saw something like that, I would be very much more likely to say, well, yeah, it's very probable that a God exists that wrote that, because anything else like that is just so unlikely that...
Okay, caller, I think I've explained why that's not necessarily a valid conclusion to leap to.
You think you have?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Because it would take far less... Caller, hang on. Because it would take far less than omnipotent power to make that thing happen. You're talking about the moving the stars around example.
Right. I this does not prove an omnipotent God.
Okay.
No, I'm not saying
you have some non-omnipotent God that you're looking for proof of? Gods, at least the standard...
As a Christian, I don't believe that you can prove that God exists.
Okay.
I don't believe you can, because otherwise he wouldn't be God. He would be something that we can capture in a finite mind, which I don't think would happen.
Well, I don't think so, because I mean, you can prove that I exist, and I don't even have the capability of doing all the stuff that God could do. I mean, it's not the case that the more impressive you are, the harder it is to prove.
Yeah, it's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
The more impressive a thing is, the more powerful it is, the more pervasive it is, the easier it is to prove that it exists.
I don't think so. I don't think...
Okay. All right, dude. Thanks for calling.
Okay,
well, thank you. Thank you for talking to me. Bye.
Okay.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, I really think you're taking a harder line than I would take.
Yeah?
Because I would see the stars rearranging in the sky as a pretty strong point in favor. I mean, especially if the stars in the sky spelled out a detailed, specific message saying, "Here I am, and by the way, this is what I'm like." Knowing that whatever was moving the stars is capable of moving the stars, I would be at least a little inclined to say that this thing is.
I would certainly include deities among the possible explanations I'd be willing to entertain.
Right.
But I'd be looking for the physical explanation.
Of course.
Right. And so that's the thing. I mean, if it was proof that there was the God, I wouldn't be needing to look for any other possible explanations.
Yeah. Of course, this is all, I'd like to remind everybody, on a far-out tangent, since, of course, the stars don't rearrange themselves in the sky and form English, and we have instead, as claimed miracles, the fact that guys who were supposed to be dead actually aren't.
Right.
It seems kind of silly to talk about what would happen if this happened, when in fact the miracles that we do hear about are so lame.
That's a good point.
But still, I'd like to think that from a philosophical point of view, there is some sort of event that if there really was a God, it could ultimately convince me of its existence.
Yeah, I've thought very much about this, and I can think of one really easy way for a God to prove to me that he existed.
All right.
And that would be to make me omniscient. If he waved his magical hands and made me know everything, then I'd immediately be able to rule out all mundane explanations for his miraculous acts, and be left only with the direct knowledge that, why, yes indeed, there he is.
Okay, what if he didn't make you omniscient? What if he simply implanted the knowledge of his existence?
Then I think I'd be left with questioning my own sanity. Right? Because there's people running around now who
if
claim...
God can reach in and screw with your head, he'd take out the part that makes you question your own sanity.
I could certainly... Well, that's a different question. If you want to just physically force me to believe in a God, it could be done through, neural reprogramming by a supernatural entity. That would be different from me deciding to believe. That would be somebody imposing the belief on me.
Well, along the same lines then, how would you know that he really made you omniscient instead of just making you think
I would
you're
know.
omniscient?
Well, good question. I may have to revisit this one. But also, the previous caller brought up the issue of inferring intent in the things that we see, and I just want to point out that that is an extremely tricky thing to do. For example, there's a famous argument in favor of God called the watchmaker argument, right?
Right, William Paley.
William Paley. If you're walking down the beach and you find a watch and you open it up and you see its intricate workings, right? You can infer that the watch was made intentionally by some intelligent being, right? That's how the argument goes. But there's a huge problem with that argument. And the problem is this. What are you comparing the watch to infer that it's designed, right? Well, what you're comparing it to is the beach and the waves and the sky and the clouds and the stars up in the sky, right? If the watch looks designed compared to those things, then what this argument is really telling you is that watches are designed and those things aren't. Beaches aren't, skies aren't, stars aren't. The natural world around us isn't. Well, that's where you get the contrast.
According to theists, the watches are designed and the beach is designed, which means that, in fact, in the theist perspective, there is no difference between a watch and a beach in terms of design. So actually, the watchmaker argument
is just a complete waste of breath from believers. If they believe that you can just look at a grain of sand and determine that it's designed, then they don't need to even bring watches into it, which, by the way, we happen to know are designed and by human beings.
Because we have direct experience with the process by which they are designed.
Yeah.
We have our regular co-host / host, Matt, on the line. Hello, Matt.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hey, Matt.
I originally was calling to address the young lady who called in. I thought you guys did a really great job of talking about, what she experienced and how, but having come from that position, I wanted to touch on it. But then I just listened for a while. Jeff was talking about the inferring will and how complicated that can be, and that was another point that I wanted to talk on too. But I'm going to go really quick and let you guys get back to it. If I have a problem...
By the way, could you guys put the phone number back up? Thanks. Keep going.
If I have a problem, I am in a position where I need a solution. And if I can't quickly come up with a solution, that's a very uncomfortable, disempowering, frustrating feeling. And as a Christian or believer of whatever religion, you are kind of taught or learned that you should just pray, and that will ease your mind because you've now set the problem aside to some degree. And atheists can do exactly the same thing of, this is just a clearing your mind process, and there's not prayer required. When the solution does come along, and it could be immediate or 30 days or 30 minutes or whatever. The Christian, because they prayed, have an expectation, a bias toward where the solution is actually coming from, and it becomes a self-reinforcing delusion. If you have set something aside and set it out of your mind, when the answer actually does arise, you already think you know what the source of the solution is. The fact is that, you know, I experienced that, you know, answered prayer type of thinking many times over the, you know, while I was a Christian. And what I discovered is that after shedding all of my Christian beliefs and living as an atheist, the exact same stuff happens over and over again. And sometimes you just need to clear your head. And there's more evidence required to define what the source of the answer is than simply a bias, an expectation that, right, hey, God's going to answer.
A prejudice in favor of giving the credit, right, when the problem eventually gets solved to the God, because you set out to get the solution from the God.
Right, it's a bad experiment. You can't possibly, okay, I'm going to set up two people in an identical problem and let one, you know, think that the answer is coming from God, and one think that the answer is coming from themselves. You really can't demonstrate that very well. I mean, things just don't work that way. We don't have that kind of consistency in life. The last caller, in addition to the inference thing that you shot down about this writing with stars in the sky, science is about determining what's most likely and what is most probable, not necessarily absolute truths. In fact, you know, it's never really absolute truth. So there's always, and boy, don't the intelligent design folks exploit the hell out of that. But if you're determining what's most likely and most probable, the very second that God is definitively the most probable answer to something, I'll believe in God. The problem is that the amount and type of evidence required to make God the most probable answer is absurd, if not impossible, because the undefined and the poorly defined cannot be an answer to anything. That's all I had.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Catch you guys later.
Okay, are you going to be joining us at Mongolian Barbecue, or are you...
Nah, I can't. I'm packing to leave, but have a great show, and I'll see you guys when I get back.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Have
a good holiday.
Yeah, bye, Matt. What Matt was saying about, his example was directly addressing the caller who was talking about some problem where it was a question of coming up with the right things to say, right? And that is about relaxing, letting your brain do its work and come up with, ideas about what to say. But there's other kinds of problems that where the same mechanism applies. I mean, if your problem is not that you have to think of the right thing to say, but you need a new job, right?
Uh-huh.
The world is this big, huge, ever-moving, ever-changing environment where stuff happens all the time. And if you need a job and you've sent out your resumes and you haven't, you've talked to all your friends and you don't think you've gotten the leads that you need, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere, you might feel like, okay, I've done everything I can physically do, now I'm going to pray to the God, and once again, if you do that, you're setting yourself up, you're predisposing yourself to give the credit for the solution if one arrives to the God. But that solution might be because 5 weeks ago a friend of a friend of a friend heard that you needed a job, and it eventually came back around to you, right? Or some company that you'd never even heard of before and didn't know existed came into existence and checked old job applications and called you out of the blue. The world is moving and changing all the time. It's not necessary for some supernatural entity to step into your problem in order to make it change so that opportunities come up.
Right. My dad has something he likes to say, which is, I had a headache, so I took an aspirin and I prayed to God, and my headache went away. So God cured me. There's another thing I'm reminded of, which is that I once went, a few times I've gone to bed having read a particularly difficult puzzle or being stuck on a difficult part of a computer game or something. and I go to sleep, and as I sleep, the solution comes to me, and lo and behold, it actually works when I wake up the next day. If I were religiously inclined, the analogy might be that instead of thinking about the puzzle, I pray to God that it will be solved, and then the answer comes to me like it did anyway when I didn't believe in a God.
Right.
Except that this time, same thing's happening, only this time God gets the credit instead of, wow, you know, the human mind is so intricate that it keeps working while you're asleep.
Yeah, and all we're saying here is that it might be a good idea for folks to take a step back and try to get a clearer grasp of what is actually going on before leaping to the conclusion that unproved supernatural entities are tinkering with the world around us to make stuff happen. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, moving on to the next caller, we have Jerry.
Hello, Jesse. What's up?
Pardon me?
I just had a simple question.
Okay.
Well, actually, I had two questions. I wanted to ask, like, this is my first time watching the Atheist Experience, and it just kind of reminded me that since y'all are preaching, it just seems like y'all are preaching atheism, and
how's that?
Kind of, I don't know. It just you guys are just talking about atheism and saying how atheism is, and
so talking about something is preaching. If I go to a calculus class, is my professor preaching calculus?
Yes, he is.
He is.
Okay, then I don't have a problem with being accused of preaching.
If that's all you mean, then sure. We're talking about something, and you're using the word preaching for that. What's your point?
Okay.
Oh, no. It's the real question. I wanted to ask, a friend of mine had a question. It's, has anyone proven that there isn't a God?
Ah.
We already answered that.
I'm sorry, I just tuned in a little while ago.
We can handle it again. Okay. There is this basic principle in rational thinking called the burden of proof. Okay? And the burden of proof falls on the side in the argument that's claiming that they know something to be true or to exist. Right? Just for example, Christians claim that they know that there's a God. Therefore, they carry the burden of proof. It is their job to prove that the God does exist. If they don't or can't, then everybody else is left with no reason to believe in the God, and that's called atheism.
Okay, but is there proof that there isn't a God?
It's not the responsibility of unbelievers to prove there isn't. It's the responsibility of believers to prove that there is. So, do you know of any proof that the God exists?
I'm asking not about the responsibility, whose it is. I'm asking if there's proof that there isn't a God.
No, but it doesn't matter because there's no need to prove that a thing doesn't exist if nobody can prove that it does.
Well, it's a simple yes or no question.
I think I've answered it. Right?
Well, I mean,
no, there is no proof that there is no general proof that there's nothing like God.
It's sort of
but
like
it's irrelevant because it doesn't matter if there is such a proof.
It's sort of like if I were to ask you, do you believe that I have a Rolls Royce? Do you?
If you would like to make a call, please hang up and try again.
Well, let's go ahead and finish the explanation. Go ahead with your Rolls Royce
do
thing.
you believe that I have a Rolls Royce?
No.
Do you have proof that I don't have a Rolls Royce? Probably more than that.
I have sufficient evidence to satisfy me that you don't have one.
Do you believe that the caller has a Rolls Royce?
No, I don't. But
do you have any proof of that?
Of course, it is not my job to prove that you or the caller don't have Rolls Royces. It's the responsibility of you guys to cough up your freaking Rolls Royces if you want me to believe that you have them.
Right, because having a Rolls Royce is a pretty unusual and unlikely thing. So without any particular evidence that he has a Rolls Royce, I think the rational default position is no, I bet he doesn't. That's all atheism is, seriously. Are you done?
I think so. You want to go on to the next caller?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gini? Hi.
Hi.
I was watching a while ago when you were talking about the stars realigning and all the things, and I got so tickled. And but I just happened to think it's pretty arrogant of anyone to think that if God did spell out any sort of words in the sky, that they would be in English, since He was not and didn't speak it. But my other comment is for the last caller, who asked if you had any proof that there was no God. Well, there is no proof that there is a God. If there was proof that there was a God, any intelligent person would believe it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he felt that there was some point to be scored by getting us to admit that there is no disproof of God. Which, and by the way, there is something else I wanted to say. Thank you, man, for jogging my memory. There are, in fact, logical disproofs of certain specific definitions of gods. Right? For example, there is a famous thing called the problem of evil, which goes like this, right? God is defined as all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-loving, right? He can do anything, He knows everything, and He wants only good things to happen, right? If that is the definition of God, and anything not good ever happens, then that God doesn't exist. Because He couldn't be incapable of preventing that not good thing from happening. He couldn't not know that it was happening and just miss the opportunity to fix it. And He couldn't not care. So any God that's defined with those three omni characteristics, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent, can't exist if anything bad happens in the universe. And bad things do happen. Therefore, no such God.
Right. In fact, I met someone a few weeks ago, shortly after Hurricane Katrina, who told me, in all seriousness, that God had told him that He sent the hurricane to punish the people of New Orleans because they were sinners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I had all I could do not to laugh, but because he was deadly serious. But it's just, I think it's very strange the way.
Well, there was a cartoon that I brought up recently on the Nonprofits. I believe the cartoon is Tom the Dancing Bug, which periodically introduces a character called God-Man, the superhero with omnipotent powers. And in this cartoon, God-Man is sitting on the sofa saying, "Hey, I really disapprove of what these people are doing. What should I do? I know."
It's legislation.
Yeah, I disapprove of some legislation. Yep. So what should I do? I know. I'll go down and I'll explain my position clearly. No, that's not my style. I'll write it in fiery letters on the sky. No, that's too obvious. How about I just enter the spirit of this congressman and help him speak eloquently in favor, against the legislation? No, that's not right either. I'll just send a hurricane. They'll know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Yes, I couldn't have said it better. I want to thank you guys for your show. It's really great, and it's nice to know that I'm not the only one out there. So
okay, well, hey, any chance that you'll join us at Mongolian Barbecue after the show?
Probably not tonight. No, but I've been...
Well, we're here every week.
Okay,
well, for
I'll be watching next week.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Yeah, and
for all the I got to get the plug out because the producers are bugging me, and I meant to do this when Matt called, but my segue was ruined. Okay. We'll be at Mongolian Barbecue downtown near I-35 and 1st Street. The address is 117 San Jacinto, and we'll be there starting at 6:45. Now.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to comment that our last caller was talking about the guy who said he personally had been told by God that that Hurricane Katrina was meant to punish New Orleans. Well, that's fine if people want to make that claim about their God, but that just that solves the problem of evil by wiping out one of the three omnis, right? There's a God who is, well, at least powerful enough to make hurricanes. He's at least knowledgeable enough to know what the people in New Orleans are up to that he disapproves of, but he's not omnibenevolent because he wants to hurt the people of New Orleans. So, that solves the problem. You can have bad things happen under a definition of that God. So the problem of evil doesn't rule out that kind of mean God that that decides to punish people for misbehaving by drowning them.
If the people he hit were really bad, then maybe you could make a case for it. I mean, it's sort of like in that Schwarzenegger movie, True Lies. You know, you ever kill anyone? Yeah, but they were all bad.
Actually, I disagree with that.
Okay.
Because I think that all civilized people are aware that that the right way to handle people who misbehave is not by having an omnipotent tyrant who simply declares unilaterally, I don't like what they did, therefore I will destroy them, right? Any god worthy of modern Americans in particular, seems to me, ought to be a citizen of the country that he's complaining about in the first place, and get his vote and his voice in the press and all that kind of stuff, just like any other one citizen, and not be a dictator who dispenses with the political process and just hauls off and kills the people he doesn't like and gets away with it scot-free.
Yeah.
And we have ways of dealing dealing with problems in the context of civilization, and it doesn't involve mass murder.
There was another thing that I just remembered, which is that we read a story a few weeks ago about a pastor whose house was destroyed, and he was one of these people going around saying that God was punishing the evildoers.
Yeah.
Which is interesting and ironic, but I don't need to expand on that. Anyway, next caller, Gregg.
Hey, you guys want to go to Taco Bell? Eat some tacos?
Not really. We do, however, want to go to Mongolian barbecue at 6:45.
Yeah.
Next caller after that is Austin.
Yes, I was just calling to say that, like, there's no proof that there is a God. There's no proof that there ain't, but it's all about faith. And that's all that matters.
Very true.
And then that's what separates
and what's
some
faith?
people from others. Like,
and hold on, it's all about faith. So what's faith?
Faith is believing in God, like not questioning, not looking for no answer. Just
so there's no proof that there is. There's no proof that there isn't. It's all about just going ahead and believing, even though there's no proof, and not questioning. Okay, and atheists are people who hear that and say, "No, thank you, we're not going to do that."
Yeah, and y'all ain't wrong for it, you know, because y'all are your own people, you know, and everybody got to, you know, everybody do what they want to do. And I ain't the one to judge and say you're wrong or you're right, but in the end, like, we all gonna know. I'm gonna know if I'm wrong, and you gonna know if you're wrong.
Here we go.
And, you know, that's what it is.
What do you mean we're gonna? We've heard of this thing called hell that you have in your religion. Do you think that's where folks like us are going to wind up?
I didn't hear you. Excuse
me. Do you believe folks like Russell and I are going to go to hell?
No, so I ain't judging now one of y'all.
Do you believe that there is such a place as hell?
Like, if it's heaven, it got to be here.
Okay, so you believe
Have you ever heard of a
hell? And do you believe that any people go there for not being Christians?
It's like it's so many religions. Like, I done read the Holy Bible.
Okay.
I done read the Confucius. I done read the Holy Quran. And like, I don't get down with, like I don't go that deep into it. I just know it's pretty much the good and the evil. I know I have good thoughts. I have bad thoughts.
Do you think we have evil thoughts?
No.
Okay.
I'm just saying, like, for everybody that's listening, like, you know, it's just about faith.
Yeah.
You know, like, who's to say y'all wrong word, right? Y'all just going by what y'all have seen.
Questions.
It's logic, you know, it's logical, but
what's
that's
logical?
what, you know.
Say what?
Like, it's logical for y'all to live y'all life about what y'all done seen and what y'all ain't, and just to go upon the things that are facts. But, like, you know, it's all about faith, you know, because, you know, like, you know, I know you human just like me. You have some thoughts in your mind to say do this, some thoughts in your mind to say do that. And, you know whether they're good or bad. And, you know what I'm saying? It just goes like, you know, something like that. I ain't to say that, that, you know, that Jesus died on the cross and all that. Like, you know, I don't know that that's true, and I don't know that it's not true. But I feel that it's a good part of everybody and it's a bad part of everybody. And,
okay. Okay, fine.
All right. Thanks for calling, I guess. Anyway,
Well, that's fine. I mean, that's a relative. I would say that last caller had a relatively healthy attitude. That
okay,
you know,
sure.
but this thing about faith. You know, if faith is just believing without asking any questions, I just think that's irresponsible.
He did say, when you asked him what faith means, he said faith means just believing in God, which seems to be the opposite of the point that I think he was trying to make, that believing in God is about faith and not believing in God is about faith. If faith means believing in God, then by definition, it's not about faith to us.
Yeah,
but maybe he wasn't going where I thought he was.
But, you know, it doesn't take faith to simply refrain from believing in stuff that hasn't been proved. It doesn't take faith. It takes a thing called common sense.
But a lot of people say that it does. Like there's a book out now called "I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist."
It's convenient, of course, for religionists who are in the position of having really nothing to go on to justify their beliefs other than deciding to go ahead and believe even though there's not the slightest scrap of evidence for it, right? It's very convenient for them to try to level the playing field by turning to atheists and saying, well, you're in the exact same position as us. But we're not in the same position as them. All right, we are in the position of saying, look, we'll believe stuff when there's a darn good reason to believe it. And faith just isn't. I mean, faith isn't a reason. Faith is the description of believing without a reason.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, next caller, Michael.
Hey, what's up?
Hi.
That theory, the disproof of God, the fallacy using
problem of evil.
Problem of evil.
Right. I think I know who the philosopher was who originated it. I think it was Immanuel Kant. I don't know if you guys ever heard about him. He was a metaphysical philosopher.
Okay.
If you want to, I guess,
I am aware of who Kant is. But
I think
I think that the problem of evil is older than Kant.
Well, I mean, the fallacy disproving God, you know, I think it was one of the original philosophers was Immanuel Kant, so I'm not sure. But what I wanted to talk about was the miracles, the topic of miracles.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's silly that how some people try to attribute it to the unexplained force of God. And in the Western religions, many people explain it to God. I think in Eastern religions, many people attribute it to karma. And things happen. I mean, decades ago, if people lived through cancer, they would have considered it a miracle. But today, many people are living through breast cancer, prostate cancer, and it's more and more common to survive, right? I mean, so if somebody lives through something like a crazy disease today, I think it's silly to attribute it again to, you know, the unexplained force of God. I mean, we're making breakthroughs in modern medicine and everything, so it's...
Yeah, and it's also insulting to the very educated and skilled doctors who actually healed the person of cancer, but you instead say, oh, God did it.
Right. And, you know, to a certain extent, religious expectations advance with the times. I mean, a few hundred years ago, it might have been considered miraculous to still have all your teeth by the age of 50. And it's no big deal now, right? So they've pretty much slacked off claiming that that's a miracle, but they've moved on, and now it's, whatever the new thing is that we still haven't conquered yet, but we get lucky and we solve it one time, then suddenly it's miraculous.
Right. I mean,
yeah, it seems like in the Bible, miracles happen just all the damn time. And now it's like once in a while somebody sees Jesus in a tortilla.
Right. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
Thanks for letting me talk.
All right, thank you. Moving right along, we got Mike. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good.
Fine.
I like your show. I think you're interesting, and you like to think and you like to talk about things. But how much have you studied the philosophers and what they thought about God?
I've read philosophy. I've read a lot of philosophy. In fact, it was, dealing with philosophy was part of a side effect of being in high school debate. But I've actually gone on to read a lot more philosophy since I've been out of school and haven't had any need to read philosophy. I mean, do you have?
Well,
what are you looking for?
If the greatest thinkers in the history of the world have, tried to answer this question, and if you're not interested in what they thought, then, how serious are you in really wanting to know the truth?
I'm interested in what they thought, but at the same time, I don't recognize people being the greatest thinkers in history as necessarily making them right. I mean, like Aristotle, for instance, was one of the greatest thinkers in history, and he believed that, for instance, heavy objects fall faster than light ones, which we now know is wrong, along with a whole lot of other ridiculous things that he also believed at the time.
Yeah, it's not because he was dumb.
Right.
It's because in his age that wasn't known.
Well, Sir Isaac Newton was the greatest scientist of Western.
That's right.
Science,
did he believe in evolution?
God, and Immanuel Kant, which you didn't seem to know too much about, was also one of the greatest philosophers, and you don't seem to even know.
Actually, Isaac Newton is really well known for his physics, and his philosophy is hardly ever read.
But he was a pretty intelligent person, wasn't he?
What?
And so was Kant.
And actually, it's not that we don't know anything about Kant, it's that we weren't certain that the problem of evil was from Kant.
Right.
That was the specific question.
We're not talking about the problem of evil, we're talking about whether or not there's a God that exists.
Okay.
And I'm saying that the thinkers down through the ages, a lot of them seem to me, to what I read, to say that there is a God. Maybe you don't know the nature of this God.
So your evidence that God exists is that a lot of people think he exists. I mean, it would be one thing if these people had really convincing evidence, but on the contrary, we find that the greatest people in history have to come up with a whole lot of hand-waving arguments to try to get around the fact that there doesn't seem to be any.
Or me, right?
Okay.
Is there anything wrong with being
caller, I'm afraid you're
understanding the limits of your knowledge?
Caller?
I'm going to have to put you on hold.
I'm afraid you're now engaging in a logical fallacy called the argument from authority. You're saying just because big-name philosophers in ancient times believed in a God kind of like yours, and I would point out, actually, that the God believed in by, say, most of the ancient Greek philosophers was really not a whole lot like yours. And in fact, what happened there was Christians started referring back to the ancient Greek philosophers when they were having a hard time in Rome because the Roman government licensed religions and said if your religion is not officially recognized by the state, you're not legally allowed to practice it in Rome. And the Christians started going to the Roman government saying, please officially recognize our religion. Here's why it's legitimate. It's because our God is like the one that the ancient Greek philosophers talked about. So anyway, where was I going with this? It is a fallacy to claim that just because some big-name folks of ancient times believed a certain thing, therefore it's true. Yes, we recognize those people were very smart, but we also recognize that they didn't have a lot of the actual physical evidence and accumulated knowledge that we have now that came about after their time.
Right.
So just, that their existence doesn't prove anything. And their opinions don't prove anything.
Okay, you're back on. Do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, one last thing.
Okay.
There's a professor at Tulane University. His name is Frank J. Tipler. He wrote a book called The Physics of Immortality. He's a scientist at a prestigious university.
I'm familiar with Frank Tipler.
What do you think about that?
I have.
Do you understand that?
I have. Yes, I have read some of the things that he's written, and ultimately.
Okay, so then the argument that you made just a minute ago about authority is false.
I'm sorry, we only have about 30 seconds left in the show, so I'm going to have to let you go so Jeff can talk about it.
I'll tell you what, with 30 seconds left, I can't cover it. I'm going to remember to do Tipler next time.
Okay, write to tv@atheist-community.org, and we can have these kind of discussions in more detail.
That's true.
Didn't mean to cut you off, but...
we're out of time.
Right, we're absolutely out of time, and thanks to all the people who make this show possible. Meet us in 45 minutes at Mongolian Barbecue downtown on San Jacinto, and bye.